Hi everybody, my name is Miss Davis, and today we're going to be learning about Zentangle designs. Zentangle designs are a really interesting way to draw, and it's supposed to be fun and relaxing as well as zen, which means that we just want to be drawing with kind of a mindful thought of kind of getting involved in our practice of drawing. So first I want to go over the materials that you might need for this project. Today I'm just using some printer paper, and you can use any type of writing utensil. If you have Sharpie markers, these are really nice to use, but if you also need to use a pen, that's fine. Today I'll be using ultra fine point Sharpie and a fine point Sharpie. Here's an example of a Zentangle drawing and painting that I created. So Zentangles are a non-representational way to draw, which means that they don't really look like anything in real life. So they're abstract in a way. My seahorse I drew and painted with watercolor, and I think it looks pretty lifelike. And you can see in the background I created a lot of different Zentangle designs to fill up the space and give it something to pop against in the background. So one of the aspects of Zentangle designs is the word strings. So when you think of the word string, you kind of think of a line. So that's basically what a string is it's just a line drawn to break up the different types of patterns you'll be drawing. So here you can tell that I created lots of wavy lines in the background. So these are my strings that I drew to break up the patterns in my background. So when we are drawing, we want to think about the elements and principles of art and design. So those are line, shape, color, value, form, texture, and space. For this project, I want to create strings that are going to actually create a representational form, which is going to be a flower. So before we begin, if you're using really thin paper, you might want to use 2 sheets of paper just so you don't mark up the surface underneath. Sharpie can bleed really easily through any paper that it comes into contact with. So this might be a really fun opportunity for you to go outside and see what you have in your own backyard that you can get some inspiration from. If you have some interesting flowers or vines or any plants that are popping up. It's springtime in my own neighborhood. I've been walking around and looking at the different types of flowers that are popping up. If you want to follow along and do what I'm doing, this would be a good chance for you to get some paper and a Sharpie, or you can just watch me and try it out on your own later. First, I'm going to be starting with the center of the flower and adding some petals. Mine are going to have sharp points, but yours can have round points. It can be whatever you want. Then the background, I'm going to make some vines with some leaves. So I'm going to make one of these strings, and I'm actually going to add leaves to it. And I'm just doing that by making a semicircle, and another semicircle, and then closing that shape up. And then I'm going to do that over here too. And one over here. And the last one over here. So now I have this nice drawing of my flower and vines, and I want to fill up all the shapes with Zentangle designs. So I'm going to teach you a few different Zentangle designs. The first one is called Aura. So what you want to do is you're going to be drawing circles, and I think I want to start in the center of the flower. So you can draw some circles. I'm going to start with just 3. And now, to make things interesting, I'm going to move to my extra fine point Sharpie. What I'm going to do is going to draw circles around those circles. And then I'm going to draw another circle. And this is called drawing concentric circles, when you draw circles around one another. Okay, now something is going to happen here. So I'm drawing my circle around, and now I can't fit in between that space. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to join those circles together. And the same here, okay? And then here, I can't fit in between that space, so I'm actually going to join all the circles together. And so the name Aura kind of comes from this idea of these concentric circles creating an aura around those shapes. Okay? And if you wanted to, you could even go in and color in some of these concentric circle shapes later, but I think I'm going to move on to the next part. So the next type of Zentangle design I want to show you is swirls, and I really like this one. So to draw a swirl, you're just going to start in the middle and kind of create concentric circles that go out just by continuing that line. And then we want to keep them connected. You can also start from the outside and work inside. And we want to make them all different sizes to create variety and movement. And so we have lots of swirls that are connecting with each other and making this type of pattern. I'm using my bigger Sharpie, but if you want to use your fine point Sharpie for this type of design, that's totally up to you. There are lots of different types of Zentangle designs. You can get inspiration from other artists that like to create Zentangle designs, and you should also try and design some of your own Zentangle designs. So this one's called Swirls. The last one is called Shapes. And so, like the title, Shapes, we're going to be drawing shapes. And so I'm going to start with a triangle. I'm going to draw some big triangles in the background. And this Zentangle design is going to cover up our entire background. So now that I have a lot of these bigger triangles drawn, I'm going to use my ultra fine point Sharpie and go in, and I'm going to be drawing smaller triangles. And the way I'm going to draw them is so that they appear like they're all fitting in nicely with one another, but I'm putting space in between each of them. Kind of like it was a puzzle, but the puzzle pieces aren't quite touching. So putting that space in between each of them is Just kind of adding some movement and rhythm. We want to make sure all the space is filled up nicely. One thing that's great about Zentangle designs is that if you make a mistake, like I kind of did here, it's not that noticeable because there's just so much going on with all the patterns that it all kind of blends together. So if you make a mistake and you're using Sharpie, that's totally fine. Okay, so now that I've filled up this area, what you can do is you can actually go in and create these little notches on the bigger triangles to make them stand out a little bit more. And if you wanted to go in and even add some little lines and stripes to those small triangles, you're adding some value and interest to the small triangles versus the big triangles. So now that I'm done with my Zentangle flower, I could go in and add some color using colored markers in the flower or the leaves. But for now, I think I'm gonna stop and encourage everybody to try out their own Zentangle designs. Remember to be creative and have fun drawing. Thanks for watching.